I mean, may I say first of all, it's been a great privilege to be here with you, and for me personally to meet this lovely centre, and for the first time in my life to see this birthplace of Rudolf Steiner. About myself, I've known about Rudolf Steiner all my life because my parents were involved, but I didn't have a Waldorf school education. Went to an ordinary, a sort of mainstream school. It was an unusual school, but it was connected with the church, and I was a singer in the choir, but that's beside the point. I was going to do music and languages and humanities when I was leaving school, but then I met an anthroposophical physician and he inspired me to study medicine. So I changed my course, and after 8 years of university I qualified as a doctor, and as a medical doctor obviously, and became involved in building up anthroposophical medical work in the United Kingdom. Had some colleagues, connected with the clinic, helped to found a clinic in fact, and I worked there for 25 years in general medicine and in a limited extent psychiatry. So that was the main professional background. But of course there were many institutions in England, particularly Camp Hill, working with special needs people, and they were desperate for medical help. So I got more and more drawn in that direction in various places, in various Camp Hill places. And when I left the clinic, I decided to do a further training in child development, psychology. It was actually a form of psychology well known in some places, psychosynthesis psychology. That was built up in Italy originally by someone called Roberto Assagioli, who's quite famous. And I found his work inspiring, and I studied for 5 years, and then brought that more and more into my professional work, which is what I've been doing since 2009, really. I think that sort of gives a bit of a picture. I retired from clinical medical practice in 2014, but continue to work as a psychologist, and I still consult in various special needs schools and homes. That's the news in brief on me. Well, of course, that's a huge question.
Yes.
And there are different levels of answering. Steiner was very insistent that anthroposophical medicine built on mainstream medicine. He didn't want to create a generation of, shall we say, unqualified doctors. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we're all properly trained in ordinary medicine, and in general hospital medicine, I would say 90% corresponds with ordinary medicine. But anthroposophy enkindles a particular attitude towards the patient, because we want to approach the person as a person of body, soul and spirit, and we want to validate the unique path of development of each person, and we see illness not only or necessarily as something just to be eliminated, but as bringing a person into a new phase of their development. So yes, we share the basic values of what I hope one might call any good physician in terms of relief of pain and relief of suffering, but we try to bring also a further dimension into that, which is very possible in general practice. In hospital medicine, less so, because you're in hospital for an acute problem and you probably leave within a week or two, hopefully. But in a general practice situation, it's more possible to work with patients. And anthroposophy has developed artistic therapies, eurythmy as a therapy, music as a therapy. It's also helped to encourage body therapies. So we often work with osteopaths or craniosacral therapists, as well as having our own particular approach to massage. So from that point of view, I think you could call anthroposophical medicine as a kind of first generation holistic medicine. And I should also say psychotherapy, of course, because Steiner's insights into the human being very much support those of Assagioli and can and indeed are building on existing psychotherapy trainings and complementing those as well. So I teach in America on psychotherapy trainings and a little bit in the United Kingdom too. Well, I don't think there is any one answer to that. I think that the use of technology in young children is a problem the effects of which are not yet fully appreciated. And I think that we have to be more than very careful. I think we need an entirely new approach to how to manage mobile phones, Xboxes, computer games, particularly in the first 7 years of life, if not, and I don't think children should have any exposure in the first 3 years. And I think that modern approaches to bringing IT into schools at the age of 3, 4, 5 are medically and educationally profoundly misguided. So if I had to name one thing, that would be it. I think the next thing I would name would be probably nutrition. And here we come on to a close relative of anthroposophical medicine, which is biodynamic agriculture. And I think the world needs, in terms of limiting something, I think we have to limit the impact of technology, especially but not only on young children. I think that's number one. And I think number two, which is doing something more positive than limiting something, is biodynamic agriculture. And that's such a close relative of anthroposophical medicine because it's looking at how to, well, if anthroposophical medicine is promoting health in the human being, biodynamic agriculture is attempting to promote health in the soil and build on and develop new research in that, in the way of improving humus content of soil and also improving mineral content of soil, which is terribly depleted, and really developing an understanding of what we have a movement called community-supported agriculture, which is bringing the food production into a much closer proximity to the local population so that we are not polluting the environment by taking milk all the way from Scotland to Greece in order to make yogurt in order to take it back. You know, we have to try and build our agriculture into the locality and try and develop something more long-term sustaining to the environment. And I would like to see communities arising around farms which also promote healthcare and education and a deeper understanding that our relationship to the land is part of our health, as well as what we actually end up eating, which is of course very important too. I don't think I'm qualified to look at the economic and sociological implications of this, certainly for cities. I mean, I'm hoping others are doing that. But I at least can see the enormous possibilities of it happening in more rural areas. And I think I am, after all, a doctor and not not a politician or a sociologist or an economist. Well, of course, what I've seen is very limited. I find this centre a wonderful beacon from what I've seen and how it is managed and run and its appearance. And I think the fact that it exists in Steiner's birthplace is a bit of a beacon. I would hope that more people locally would take an interest. But I also think this centre has a place internationally. Many people from the United Kingdom, for instance, would love to come and visit this place. As I did, see his birthplace and just get an impression of where it was that he was born, what kind of context he was born into. And yesterday, Daniel, who helped to organise this event, took me to those thermal baths, where I was also very, very moved. I gather that those buildings, the hotel and the buildings of the baths, were designed by the same architect as built here. And it was wonderful to see evidence there of exposure to Steiner's work. And I would hope to be involved in, Daniel and I were talking about having more of an international event here. But I don't know what else is going on here, so I can only give you my initial impressions, which are very positive. Well, the topic of autism, of course, came about because of the organizer's relationship to the theme. That's my friend Daniel. Do you know his surname? I can't pronounce it properly.
Grčević.
That's right.
Right.
Well, I've met Daniel in recent years. We don't know each other for a long time. And he knows about my work in the special needs field. He has his own autistic child who is in a centre in Ireland, a Camp Hill place in Ireland. But he's got a very strong hope to establish some centre here for special needs. And so he invited as many people as he knew, and also from Ireland, to join this event. And it worked. I mean, we were small, we were 23, but that's significant. And many of the teachers who came from either mainstream education or Steiner Waldorf education are, of course, encountering more and more children who are, as we say in England, on the spectrum of autism. That's, of course, a complicated diagnostic thing, but it's not. One has to be aware of the autistic phenomena now in children generally. Diagnosis is increasing, I think partly because people are diagnosing it more, and partly because it is increasing, probably at the hand of many different factors, ecological, nutritional, technological, I think, plays into it. One could talk for a long time about why this condition may be increasing at this point in history. There are many different theories. I can't go into that now. But what we did in the conference was look at all the different ways that autism manifests, because it's a huge spectrum, from completely non-verbal children and adults who have no capacity to live independently at all, to highly intelligent, verbal people who make a huge contribution to society, but who have certain differences. The word is neurodiversity, have certain differences in how they process information, and many have a difficulty in establishing relationship to other people. It seems difficult for an autistic person to get into the skin of another person, although on another level they may be very, very sensitive to what is going on in that other person, but difficult for them to bring it to an expression in the here and now, in the context of ordinary life. So we were exploring this, and we were looking at ways of understanding neurosensory development in the child to help us to better appreciate how neurodiversity can arise altogether. Autism is an extreme, or can be an extreme, expression of generalized sensory integration problems. And one can find elements of autism in dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, just as one can find elements of all those things within the autistic spectrum itself. And of course, autism and attachment theory come close to each other. Many traumatized children who are suffering from insecure attachment disorders show autistic-like features: huge anxiety, compensatory obsessive-compulsive behavior. These are not characteristic, these are not the diagnostic features of autism, but they often belong to autism. I mean, diagnostic features of autism are usually repetitive movements, behavioral disturbances that begin in very early childhood. In many children who have autism, develop seemingly in an ordinary way, a traditional way, with milestones up until 13, 14, 15 months when language is being developed, and then there is often a regression. Not always. Autism does not have to. The diagnosis of autism isn't dependent on there having been a developmental regression, but when there is a developmental regression, that very often points or affirms the diagnosis. Whether autism is already there gestationally in fetal development, to what extent it's genetic, epigenetic, transgenerational, all these are very open-ended questions. There are elements of genetic and epigenetic etiology in autism, that's clear, but it's difficult to put your finger on them. You can't easily define an autistic gene. It's much more complex. And of course it comes to expression through highly complex neurological, developmental issues, parts of the brain not integrating with each other in the usual way, the limbic system not linking in with the cortex in the usual way, some areas of the brain perhaps being overdeveloped, others underdeveloped. And also there is increasing evidence that autism is connected with microbiome development, which of course immediately opens up the whole question of nutrition and agriculture, and also the overuse of antibiotics, which isn't helpful for microbiome development. I mean, even the World Health Organization has declared antibiotic sensitivity to be one of the major difficulties now. Groundwater is polluted by antibiotics. Cattle and animals in mass production need antibiotics to prevent them from suffering from infections, and then all the antibiotics go via their feces into the soil and the groundwater. They're recycled into the food chain, and our microbiomes are suffering as a result. I mean, 20 years ago we didn't understand that the microbiome had a part to play in immunological development and also in neurological development. There is increasing evidence now, irrefutable evidence to the effect that that is the case. So again, we're not looking at a problem, we can't look at the problem of autism in isolation. It's part and parcel of an ecological health. How do we relate to the plant world, the animal world, and how do we relate humanly to one another? And of course, technology there's a paradox here. I'm quite sure that technology can encourage an autistic development. Of course, people then say technology helps people with autism. Many people are into the use of computers for communication in technology. And it is clear that many autistic people find a way of facilitated communication via technology. So yes, technology can also be useful in helping people with autism, and at the same time it may also be part and parcel of why so many features of autism are increasing. So it's a vast field and it's interdisciplinary. It needs neurodevelopmental psychologists, psychiatrists to work along with others in complementary fields of education, nutrition, agriculture, and even medicine. That's the story in brief that we were trying to explore at this conference. All I could say is that having met your work and your centre here, it would be very high on my priority list to accept any invitation, and I would be honoured.
Thank you very much.
That's wonderful, and thank you.